Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here along with Rogan Smith and Kendrick Williams. Our Candy's in the house. Our guest this afternoon is going to be NICHOLETTE Bethel. She'll have a different perspective on the civil service. We were talking about that last week with Ryan Pinda. And she comes from she's not only a civil servant, but her family, who actually is my family, has almost all of their family members, whether they were uncles, aunts, cousin, almost all of them were in the civil service. So it'll be an interesting discussion. So what's happening, ladies? Anything going on?
Just chilling on the weekend.
Good
watching
time.
my Law and Order marathon. SVU.
My favorite show now is gotta be America's Got Talent. It's just there's so many. It's like the old time when I was growing up, variety shows. And that's the point. It's a variety show, so you never know what you're going to get. You know, it's not a kind of like The Voice is all singing.
I forget, yeah.
American Idol is all singing.
America's Got Talent, right? Yeah. That's what it is. It's different
shows, performances, yeah.
I forgot about that.
But I discovered something, and I want to know, this is more up Ken and I's alley, that I didn't know what could happen, Ken. People will ridicule me or ridicule us. If it's ever happened to you.
You said Ken and I's?
Ken and I.
Ken and I.
Yeah, Ken and I.
Ken and I.
Right.
So,
Ken and I. Yeah.
So that people will ridicule us. That's assuming it's happened to you. It's happened to me, and I'm ready to reveal it. I was at Murray's. You know Murray's? Which is a diner, deli.
Yeah.
But I sat at the counter. You know, and they have those stools. And I was sitting there, and I couldn't figure out when I got up why my genitals felt the way that it did.
Whoa. I wasn't prepared for that.
You weren't prepared for that?
No.
Okay. Anyway, I didn't, I kind of figured maybe it was just some off thing. I don't know. Anyway, I happened to go back the next day, and the same thing happened again. And you know what I realized? And I looked it up.
What's that?
My balls and penis had gone to sleep.
I was going to ask you what feeling.
Like a numbness.
Numbness.
You've ever had that happen to you, Ken?
So you had numbness?
If you sit, apparently, well, maybe that's where it comes from. That's where it comes from. Because apparently people who ride bicycles for a long period of time have that sensation. I don't know if women get a kind of sensation, but it's a weird feeling. You can look it up when you get it. It's your penis has gone to sleep. So I just want guys out there who this may have happened to not to panic. Because I didn't know. You see, you don't associate things, right? It's like, do you remember? You know asparagus, right? For years, I ate asparagus. I never really made any connection.
It's so stinking.
Okay, but I never understood why every Sunday when I'd have dinner and I didn't even know what I have. I thought it was wine. I thought that's what was causing it. Okay, until someone on a TV show once said, "Yeah, carry your asparagus smelling," and then I go, then it snapped. Because you think something's wrong. You don't know, it's no. Would you have known that? You knew that. How did you know that?
I wish y'all could see Rogan's face.
I knew it because I drink a lot of water, and so I use the bathroom a lot. And so when I had some asparagus, everything is normal. Yeah. And I
you acquainted it right away?
I said, hold on now. What did I eat out of the ordinary?
It's like most foods don't smell. You go to the bathroom, yeah.
Like don't have relations after asparagus. Nothing.
Okay.
It smells.
I don't eat asparagus.
It's not bad. It just smells funny.
It smells awful.
Yeah. Okay. It's a funny smell.
It smells like fecal matter.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Does.
All I'm saying is
yes,
this: it's strange. It was to me, Ken. It wasn't so much gross as it was abnormal. And you go to the bathroom, you leave. It's it. But you don't expect. Like, what is that?
If you use the bathroom, if you go to urinate after asparagus and somebody walks in after you, they'll think you pooped.
Okay, well,
that is a general consensus.
Yeah, I never had anyone walk in after me.
Well, maybe I think that's what it is.
That's why I say it smells like fecal matter. It has like high sulfur content.
There's other things that freak you out too. You don't expect it, and I'm not going to get too graphic, but if you have that red snowball.
What?
The red snowball.
Would they sell inside the convenience stores?
Like snowball.
The snowball.
Snow cone.
Snow cones?
Yeah, y'all call it snow cone. We call it snowball when it's growing. It's snowball.
Okay.
And you go home and you utilize the men's, the room, or what have you. Sitting. When you get up, you'll go into a panic.
The color.
It comes on red. You go, and if you don't,
I didn't know
if you don't if you don't
sure?
Well, it happened, and I've done it more than once.
You had that before again?
Beets. Well, I can understand.
But if you don't really? Equate it, right? Because anytime you hear about blood, as we say in the medical world, if you see blood in the stools,
I didn't know
in
that.
your feces.
Yeah, but they don't say that. They say in the stools.
In the stools.
Yeah.
She's trying to be radio friendly.
No, but that's medical. If you're having a medical show, that's what they would say.
I mean,
that's what they would say. But if you don't equate it, right, you panic. Because you figure your inside falling out. You know?
So, how long have we been on the show? Oh, we said some words.
No, but it's just
I didn't know about the beets now.
Beets.
Yeah, the beets.
But obviously it sings with this kind of dyes in it, right?
Beets.
Really? And when they make them beets in the can, they probably adding a little bit of other color in there. They want to make sure it's red.
Oh,
feta cheese.
You don't
I think it's red dye.
No, beets with feta cheese.
Oh.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a good combination.
But Ken. So so if again you and I, this is between you and I, if you're on the stool and it happened, and fall asleep, don't panic.
That's a side of
But now you know where that phrase comes from.
Yeah,
you've experienced it.
There's Nicolette. Yeah. So anyway, I just want to make sure this is what we do. That guys out there, I'm sure Ken, even if it's one guy's going. Phew.
Oh. They're numb for a reason.
One guy, I sat next to a guy the other day at a restaurant, and he was saying, "How you doing?" I said, "Boy, I'm just so tired all the time, man." So he says, "Well, yeah." What was that? I said, "Well, probably half the reason is, I have to go to the bathroom 3-4 times a night." He goes, "You too?" He says, "Wow, I feel relieved."
How old is this guy?
He's 50-ish. He said, "Thank goodness. I thought it was just me."
Just go put on a pop-up.
I believe it, but
I wouldn't mind doing one of those because I don't like to get up.
I can totally see you wearing a diaper.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for medicinal.
I know what I'll get for your birthday.
I'm going to wait for the MM. Because that'll put you to sleep.
Okay.
Yeah. No, but I don't. You don't want to be laying around in that.
I think he'll use it.
You don't want to lie around in that.
I think when you go into bed, you can say.
Yeah, no, but diaper ration thing.
You're gonna put that on.
No, I'm gonna get the MM. I'm gonna get the MM, the medical marijuana, and just go to sleep. That's all.
And then wet the bed. So you need.
No, you don't wet the bed because you sleep. You don't even know.
You might be too relaxed, and then everything relaxes, and then you wet the bed.
The only thing you don't want to do is be dreaming about it.
And that's what's going to happen.
Have you ever done that, Ken?
In your adult life?
Ken, you've done nothing.
You pee your bed in your adult life?
Have you ever done it?
Pee the bed?
No. Dream that you were urinating.
I have dreamt that I was peeing,
and you catch yourself?
I catch myself.
That's what I'm saying. Why does it have to be a thing every time?
Hold on.
Have you dreamt it and then catch yourself? Oh well,
not in my adult life.
Obviously, Ken. I mean, unfortunately, you're not. You're not having.
Actually, I never wet the bed when I was a child.
You're not dreaming, huh?
I never wet the bed when I was a child either. I never wet the bed when I was a child.
You don't even hiccup, so it don't matter or belch or whatever it is. Yeah.
You don't belch?
No. So we know you're not normal.
That's a lie.
No, she doesn't.
How you know?
Because I worked with her for many years.
Like 11 years.
Yeah.
And she would say, I can't. And I would go, like I say, one of my best feelings is when you drink a Coke fast and you get that expulsion. And she was going, I don't know how that feels. I go, what do you mean you don't know how it feels?
I don't belch.
You do belch.
I don't belch. Oh. I don't.
And it's amazing to me how that function doesn't happen. See, look at Ken. He looks puzzled.
Don't worry about it. I can't figure it out.
Drag you down with him.
I'm not trying to drag him down. I'm talking about belching.
I know that. I'm talking about the previous
I'm saying he looks puzzled.
The previous topic, because you said he doesn't do anything.
He's dreamt before and caught himself. That's what I was talking about.
I bet you didn't get yourself.
Of course I caught myself. Yeah, I caught myself.
I can see you wearing it anyway.
I'm not going to wear it. I can see you wearing it. Some other things.
What's the other thing?
I can say it.
No, I want to hear it now. No. The audience wants to hear it.
You probably going to need like a whole tub. Wear a tub. Get you some the tubs.
I was in a bedwetter. Yeah. None of that stuff.
Yeah. Neither me.
My mommy said I was
a good child.
You mean your mother who's known to lie?
You better stop. The fame in my mouth all around this town. You better stop.
I thought it was Rogan.
You better stop.
Hey?
Huh?
I thought it was Rogie.
No, well, that's where she got it from.
So
okay, now which?
No. I said that she got it from her mother.
My mother is one of the most honest people on the planet. If I used to pee bad, she'd say, let's get stop peeing bad. She was 18. Yeah. She would say something like that. That's how
Candy, let me just say this one.
1.5.
They're from a genetically challenged family that they have the BL gene. Okay.
You're so full of it.
You know what the BL gene is?
You don't only.
Yeah, I don't know what the B stands
for. Born
for.
liar. It's a born liar gene. Okay.
They
born like that. Even when they lie and they don't know they lie.
I don't believe that.
That wasn't me. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ken.
On another note, I was reading your column today, which we have a break. We'll come back and talk about it. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ed Fields here, along with NICHOLETTE, Bethel, and Rogan Smythe.
Nicolette. That's your name.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing how you're so impressionable when you're young. There's a couple. Nicolette is our guest this afternoon. Nicolette Bethel. Anthropology. I would always say political science because she dabbles in that. But anthropology. So this is gonna be some anthropological stuff here as well. One of the things I want to just talk about briefly, because it happened over the last week. You and I were dabbling in this genealogy thing, and then I got this thing which Philip and I were talking about. Yep. Philip is your husband, Philip Burrows, which is the history of the Burrows folks from Long Island. It's a documentary, and I haven't seen it, but I'm sure it'll be good. And this is the type of thing, by the way, that we should be hand it to Rogan. This is the thing we should be inundated with on things like Cable Bahamas and ZNS TV as far as content. But you see, we have the whole thing worked out wrong. Someone is supposed to say to ZNS, try this. They try it for no cost. And then if it's good, they say, okay, you know what? I'm going to buy this from you guys, and we'll go and get advertisers, as opposed to you having to do the production, having to get the advertisers, having to pay for the time. It's completely screwed up. But on a more personal note, I asked everyone who was in this room before you got in here, how many people had checked out their ancestry, and everyone without exception, including myself, had only really gone back so far. I mean, it's really the people who you know in your life. You didn't even really go beyond that. I literally, this is what is it? One generation when it's grandmother. That's a generation.
But who knows?
Yeah, but I literally did not know my grandmother's maiden name.
Yeah.
I mean, I just never thought to ask, or I just never thought about it. My maternal grandmother.
Oh, maternal grandmother.
Yeah, I definitely don't know my paternal grandmother's name because I hardly met her because she was in Trinidad. But, I always knew that Nicolette and I, for instance, were related. But we just, here it is 2018. We've known that for many, many, many years. But no one really checked why we were related.
How y'all are related.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I mean, we always assumed
I was going to ask you that one time,
Yeah, we always assumed it. We always knew because from our grandparents and all that.
Good thing you didn't ask him before today, because you didn't know.
He didn't
because
know.
Not only did I not know, I went and asked, everyone in our family.
And they didn't know.
Including the family I've always known, and no one even. We have family. Can say we now. That we're the people who are one above us.
Yeah, the generation above
us. They don't know their grandfather's name.
Wow.
It just never occurred to them to. I don't know. I don't know where that comes from with us in terms of not knowing or not
keeping the records.
Where does that come from?
Well, I mean, I think in their case, Uncle Cecil's mother died, so.
But wouldn't you still know a name? I mean,
maybe
wouldn't you know?
I don't know.
I mean, or the father, the grandfather, wouldn't you know? You know.
I do not know.
But I asked, so I wouldn't name the names. I called all the people and I said, hey, do you know? No, I don't. And it may be where it's as bizarre as, what is it, your great-grandfather?
Yes.
And my grandmother were maybe brothers and sisters.
Yeah. Wow. That's the theory I'm working on.
Yeah. And it just and everything kind of opened up once I found out my grandmother's maiden name, because it was Bethel. I don't know what I thought it was Sandilands.
Yeah, I was going to say, what happened to Sandilands?
That's her marriage name.
Oh.
You see, and then in there I found out that my grandfather was an overseer at the prison, which is out in Sandilands.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, and name is Sandilands. There's this whole world that's kind of opening up now.
But I'm not sure that the prison was in Sandilands at that time. It might have been Sandilands allotment. Might have been Prison Lane.
Oh, that's true. It could have been Prison Lane, or it could.
That big
I don't think it goes back to.
No, not to the library.
Nassau Public Library.
No.
You mean Jail Alley?
Jail Alley, Prison Lane. Yeah, absolutely. I think that big building that you see in the
it looks like a warehouse opposite Mortimer's.
No, the one inside the police barracks
where they have
big buttresses.
Yeah, where they used to take the ballot boxes.
Yes.
It became the armory.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't remember. I don't know when they built the prison out in Fox Hill.
Do you think?
But it could have been. It could have been during his time. It could have been.
You think he owned the prison?
No.
You think I get some land out there?
Because
I got to move some people. Like 1,500 people got to move.
But I mean, Sandilands is the name of the people who owned.
Well, I grew up with that. It was a bad thing for me growing up.
Oh, you mean?
Because that was a crazy hill.
Yeah.
So your name Sandilands. Hey. Anyway, but let me ask you before we get into this other stuff. I think there must be a whole industry of us finding out about ourselves.
There is, and it's owned by the Church of Latter-day Saints, the same place that we went.
The Mormons, I was telling you about.
So there are a number of Bahamian documents that have been digitized. Surprise!
Really?
Yes, there are.
But by the Mormons.
I don't know if they buy the Mormons, but the Mormons are the ones who have them in their database.
Mm-hmm.
I have not been able to easily locate them through sources here in the Bahamas. Like, you can't necessarily go onto the Bahamas government website and look up your registry, your birth records, but you can pay and join a site that is owned by the Church of Latter-day Saints, and that's how I found this out. Ed gave me a name, and my husband, Philip Burrows, who is doing his genealogy, or has done a whole lot of it, said, okay, well, try this site because, I pay a lot of money for this, so they should have some stuff on it. And
there it
I
popped
did,
up.
And there it was. And it said Monica Sandilands, formerly Bethel.
Because I couldn't figure out what that FMLY was first.
Formerly.
Because I'm used to saying me. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Okay. I'm serious. I just what does that mean? But no, it's an interest. But the reason I mean industry, not only from that perspective, but we've talked about this before, about this connection between the Carolinas, for instance, and the Bahamas. Yeah. Okay. Now I'll tell you how bad it is. If you go to the Carolinas and you go to the Gullah Islands or the Geechee Islands or wherever, they're becoming extinct.
Yeah.
Okay. I found one guy on an island. I forget the name of the island. His last name was Grant.
Okay.
Now, if you hear Grant, other than Ulysses S. Grant, but if you hear Grant, you immediately think, well, first of all, Grant's down.
Yeah.
Okay. And when he started speaking, he and I had a conversation.
Sounds just like Bahamian.
And the two people who were with us were like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah. That's
but
incredible.
he was one guy on that island, and they have a whole church and a museum, and where they had the white school and the black school, and they had all this historical stuff. And they have a reunion every year, but it's maybe a couple hundred people because they're dying out. But I know that there's got to be just a wonderful, wonderful connection between the Bahamas and those folks, and I'm just so fearful that it will just kind of be something that's,
that ends up like the Greeks and the Romans, and you have to dig it up through archaeology.
Yeah, and guess, And I hope that can revive itself. On another note, so we talked about that. I want to talk to you about the civil service. I know we talked about local government and all these things. But I want to talk to you because we had Ryan Pinder on.
Oh, yes. He was really good.
On Thursday. And, a former minister. And I don't know if I'd ever heard, and I don't use the word admission, like this from a former minister before. But there were two things that he said. One, that cabinet rules by consensus, which now shows why we get nothing done. And two, that the minister has no power.
Well, I think I knew the latter one more than anything.
The minister has, when he says no power, he means that the minister can't really spend government money.
Well, he also meant that if he wanted to get things done, so he gave us an example. Two ministers of immigration and him got together, Fred Mitchell, and they decided to create a kind of a concierge level service where business, which is only maybe about 20% of work permits and all that, would have a specialized, thing that you move from Hawkins Hill to deal with this. Sounds very logical.
Except
a kind of expedited.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Precisely.
And because it's only 20% of the thing. Okay? He says
that was met with opposition. because
the director, et cetera, killed it. And
I'd say the reason why.
And the reason why, he said, and it was very blatant, because people would lose their lunch money. That's what he said. This is a former minister saying this. Now,
the director told him that?
Well, I don't know what the director told him, because I can't quote that. I'm saying he said that. He made that assumption based on...
Okay.
He made the assumption based on why they were stopping it. There are too many people vested in keeping it... keeping the status quo.
And to expedite stuff, they get tips.
Now, Nicolette Bethel, going back to the family thing, your family, probably more so than anyone I've known, has been entrenched in civil service.
Yes, that is true.
Okay? Your uncles, your grandfather, your granduncle, every kind of thing. Was involved in the civil service.
Yes, that is true.
So you have this long history. So I'm asking you this question, and you were in the civil service.
Yes.
First of all, how real is this thing that we call kind of flippantly corruption?
It's hard for me to say. I think there are pockets of corruption throughout the civil service. There are certain services that one knows that if one slips the right amount to the right person, one can get things expedited, right? There are certain pockets. But then there are other pockets where if you do that, you risk being reported to the police. It's a very the Bahamas is really interesting. You can still run across super honest civil servants who will be offended. So I think
that is a surprise to me.
It's probably
it's not a surprise to me.
No,
it's not going to be the norm.
I don't even know if it's not going to be the norm. I think the issue is that in situations where people have a high civil service, but I can't answer this question because I haven't done it. I haven't done any study on it. But from the places where I hear that there are the corruption is likely to happen, it will be places where I can get in trouble for this, but anyway, where there's a high likelihood of the high traffic in
transactional,
but not in every case. I have not heard it say, for example, about the passport office.
Okay.
All right. So, but you hear it about road traffic. You hear it about immigration. You hear it about the Ministry of Works, and I think
customs.
I think there's a difference, and this is why I'm going to get in trouble because I think that the places where it's most likely to happen are the places where people are more likely to be offered a bribe. And where people may be more likely to be offered a bribe may coincide with a high number of people who come in from abroad, who come in with the idea that a third world country is going to be corrupt, and therefore offer a bribe.
I'm going to let me
you want
say
to do
this
that, but then you explain to me why the passport office isn't one.
I'm not saying that isn't. First of all, I think if you're like Mongolian, it's hard to get a passport from the Bahamas. I'm just, you know what I'm saying. But having said that, I think that there are some daily things that the average non-Bahamian may not have any involvement in. Like, let's just customs. We have to be frank. We have to open this up to talk. The reality is Bahamians import stuff.
That is true.
Okay?
That is true.
Okay? And they import stuff a lot.
Yeah.
Okay? And there is listen, let me tell you something, because I'm sure you never experienced this. If you go to Miami, it's different from Tampa, but if you go to Miami and you go to a furniture shop, they will say to you, "Oh, you're from Bahamas? You want us to do a thing for you?"
Yeah, they know what time it is.
They don't even.
That is true.
No, do you want a different receipt?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me make you up a receipt.
Yes.
No,
yes.
that is okay.
Now that's not even
I'll
corrupt.
accept that.
Customs, that's corrupt payments. Not even customs. Okay, that's not.
No, that's corrupt. That's corruption on every single level. Yeah. Because as far as I was aware, customs tried to clean up the corruption. There was a strong effort to clean up corruption in customs.
It's let me tell you something. The combination. Let me tell you what I think about this. When you talk about this corruption, I once talked to a very senior, very big investor. And he was on the phone, and he made a comment to me, and he said, "Why? I found another country more corrupt than the Bahamas." So I said to him, "It's that bad?" And he goes, "Nah, it's really not that bad. But it is. It's petty.
Yeah,
it's petty corruption.
It is,
like at every little level, right? Like the lunch and all that, right? But it's also endemic because now let me make this distinction, and tell me if this makes any sense. there was an era of civil servants, Bahamian civil servants, who couldn't make it, say, in the blacks and mulattoes, who didn't make it in the private sector. There was a ceiling. So they entered into the public service, okay, where they were, they had room for mobility, especially after independence, right?
Well, after 1967.
Right.
Because before that, even in the civil service, you
didn't have much right.
No.
But these were jobs they could get at lower
after
levels.
1967, yes, absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah.
And even before 67, at mid-management kind of levels, they could get those jobs if they were educated.
If they were educated, but that was a minority because it was a minority that was educated. But let's go. Let's go there.
And that group of Bahamians kind of went through the civil service and later became, and I'm going to use a name, the Uncle Peters.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and for those who don't know Uncle Peter, he was what people still today, even Leslie Miller would say, the last good, and I'm not casting any aspersions on the current general master who we picked. Rogan and I picked the current general master, Mr. Hasty. Okay, that he was the last great general manager at BEC, because there was a guy who was very well educated, who was knew his, and was just the integrity thing. I went to Uncle Peter once and I asked him for a discount. He said, no, I wouldn't be able to do that. Yeah. I didn't even feel offended. It was so professionally done. Okay? But that then shifted from that generation of public servant to political patronage civil servants. And that's where now, is that a real, is that a valid?
No, I think that is a valid thing, but I mean, one needs to factor in a lot of these other things. For example, like I said, you have to remember that it was a minority of people who had the education who could go into the civil service. That's one. Two, there was always this sense that you were being watched because the default is black people as thief.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the default of the world.
Well,
that was the default.
The locals.
The natives. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
It wasn't colonial, the natives?
It wasn't colonial, the natives, because they were white natives.
Too, right?
No, but they were white natives.
Okay.
They were white locals, and they were not expected to thief. Only the non-white locals were expected to thief. And so if you were fortunate enough to get an education and then be hired to work in the civil service, you overcompensated in many ways. You did not, for example, to go back to my grandfather, who was the first non-white controller of customs. What he would do every time my grandmother and him traveled was my grandmother would pack, because my grandmother was a great shopper. She would go out and shop, and then she would pack. And
this is on your mother's side?
This is on my mother's side.
Okay,
this is the Eldons, right? Sidney Eldon was the first non-white controller of customs. I'm not calling him black because I don't want any spinning in graves to happen. Yeah. So let's call him non-white.
Yeah.
But he would go, every time my grandmother would pack, he would then go into the bedroom and open up her suitcase, and he would take out everything. And he would pull out something and say, Winnie, why is this hidden in between here? Do you not intend to declare this? You have to declare this. I am the controller of customs. You have to declare everything you buy.
Yeah.
And he would do this. Like, he would physically go and do this every single time.
Yeah.
And
because he felt he was being watched by someone higher than he. Like the PS
I don't know if
it's
that
just
was,
a thing.
For him, I don't know if it was that.
Yeah.
But I mean, and he would also
that would have been an integrity
thing.
thing.
Yeah, I think it was he would not take anything. People would give him, he used to smoke. People would try to give him cigarettes, and he would not take a cigarette because he would say, I would not want that to be construed as a bribe.
Yes.
And
see, that's what I'm telling you.
Integrity.
But this is where, when you talk about the change, and I don't know when it happened, it has a lot to do with not just that, but how we talk about all the time, how people rake their yard with the tree because they had a pride and integrity, a thing, okay? How they would dress to go to church or to go downtown, whatever. And then something happened.
Well, I think that it was this, there's this, I don't even know how to put it, but there's a thing that happens when you get to govern yourself.
Just sweet things now?
I don't know if it's just sweet things, but it's a question, it's an idea that we are all family, we are governing ourselves, we can let our hair down, and we don't have to perform for anybody else. And unfortunately, what that suggests is that for some people, behaving well was an act that you put on for other people.
We didn't have to be accountable?
yes, we didn't have to be accountable because this is our country, we own it, we don't. You know what I mean?
I agree with her. Mm-hmm.
I think because it's the same set of people even today who will drive around who will run red lights and. I'm going to sound like Aaron Green for a minute, but let's take traffic and not put on their seatbelt and so on. But they will never, ever do that in the United States.
But see, and then it goes back to this thing, and this is something that always bothers me. And it's like this. Rogan wrote a column today, and it was about how we speak. And, for many, many years, and even going back, so you sound white.
Right.
Or you think you're white.
Yeah.
Or you acting white. No, I'm speaking proper English.
Yes, exactly.
It's a way of kind of, because your self-value is low, you have to bring the other person down to you. Because you can't, because if you have to make that comparison, then you're not as,
well,
you know what I'm saying, right?
It's an internalized racism. It's the racism of the world that you then take and you believe is truth,
right.
even if you would totally protest if I said that to your face. I mean, it comes out in every single level. There's a structural reinforcing of the things that people of the justifications that people use to enslave Africans, right? They're savage, they're violent, they're heathen, they're godless, they're sexually unbridled, they're all of these things. And we see this again and again. Anything like the whole gangster rap thing, I mean, that is not the only music that black people produce, but that is the most promoted music, and the people who promote that the most are actually white people who own the conglomerates that put that out there and make it so that is what you have to identify with. Nobody's promoting George Washington Carver, right? Nobody's promoting Frederick Douglass or any people who are making positive and uplifting things. They're promoting the things that are reinforcing this idea of savagery, sexual.
Okay, and I understand that and I get that because it's tribal. But then how do you do it to yourself?
No, but then you internalize it because that is there. That is what you are consuming, So let's take the responsibility. We do not balance that in our society, in our educational system, in our anything. We don't balance that with the contributions that black people have made.
Well, at the leadership, for instance, level, and this has nothing to do with party because it's both, right?
Yeah.
What do? We castigate, we denigrate people who, so for instance, again to Ryan's point, this country, financial success, wealth, if you call it middle class status, is based on direct foreign investment. Period. Okay? I mean, the reality is, whether it's banking, whether it's individual ownership of investing stuff, if it's hotels, it's foreign investment. Okay? But yet we denigrate it to the extent that we actually.
We're almost xenophobic.
I mean, it's just kind of schizophrenia.
Well, it is a schizophrenia, but I see. Okay, so that is the reality, that is the truth, but that is the result of government policy. Government policy. I don't think that's the only way that wealth can be made in this country.
I'm not saying it's the only way, but what I'm saying is.
But that is the way that we have chosen.
Right, and then what we do is it's like you coming to my house and bringing me a cake, and I really enjoy cake. And I eat cake, okay? And then, when you leave, I say, she's a sucker. She ain't no good. I don't like her. Why is she bringing a piece of cake?
But that's kind of normal.
Well, sometimes they say it to your face.
No, but it's not a real, because it's a closed-mindedness.
Well, it's not just a closed-mindedness. It's also the message that is sent to the ordinary person is that you're not good enough for the government to invest in. You're not good enough for us to support. The only way that this country can ever make money is by getting somebody who is good enough to bring it in. That's the message.
Nicolette, let me tell you.
And the reaction is logical. I mean, it's not right, but it's logical.
Right now, we have a thing called the Hotel Encouragement Act.
Yes.
Okay? All right. Now, under the Hotel Encouragement Act, Nicolette Bethel and Saul Kersner get the same benefit.
If I open the same size hotel.
Well, it doesn't matter. No. The Hotel Encouragement Act actually is 50 rooms or more.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
You don't no, you don't have to all open up 4,000. I'm saying you could open up a 50. In the outer islands, I think it's 10 rooms.
Yes, it's 10
what
rooms
I'm saying is the same benefits under the Hotel Encouragement Act that afford to the foreigner is afforded to Bahamians. Okay? So let's just, look at that. No, that's just a reality. I mean, you can check it out.
I'm not arguing with. I'm not going to argue with the act is the act, right?
The act is the act.
Is the act.
So the question is, yes, we signed the thing. Now, what I feel is that those who have capital.
But the act is not the problem. The memorandum of understanding is to some degree the problem, but that's not necessarily it either. The issue is that the message that our governments are sending and have been sending for like the last generation is that the only thing that we are investing in, let me turn it around for you. When Baha Mar came on stream, the same year that the government decided it was going to give Baha Mar, I don't remember how much, 20 million, whatever million annually in
marketing dollars.
Right.
That
was the same year that same government of the Bahamas decided that it was going to cut its subsidy to the University of the Bahamas to under 20 million. Mm-hmm. Now, what does that tell me?
Mm-hmm. No, and I understand that. I'm not going to dispute that. But if you go through line by line, and we're going to always argue. I mean, governments all around the world. Let's face it, they got a problem with supporting education and the arts. Right. They always seem to cut these things, right?
But you see, but my thing is then if that is the case, if the message, the fundamental message that you're sending is not only are you not good enough to get as a Bahamian to be educated to be able to compete with these people, is that you ain't gonna ever be good enough because we're not gonna give you enough money to be good enough.
We're gonna take a break. We'll come right back because I'm going to dispute that to some degree. Let's do this. We're going to do about 5 more minutes here, and then our guest this afternoon is NICHOLETTE BETHEL.
Thanks for playing that song, by the way. I haven't heard that in a long
Candy,
time.
He played it on the first intro.
I didn't hear it.
I don't have my headphones anymore.
So anyway, we were talking about
knowing your natural sleeping
cycle.
Your
like
clock.
I say, I've seen things on TV, and apparently this sleep deprivation thing
is a serious thing.
Like the most, I mean, I don't want to over exaggerate it, but in the top 5 serious health issues. It causes
damages to your brain.
Yeah, well, the health issues, it's people aren't getting sleep. They're watching TV all night. They got this smartphone. I'm sorry for kids. At least kids used to get a good knockout. They go play ball outside or run around. You have to make
sure to reel them in, take away their electronics and things like that. But not only that, I mean, well, you force kids to go to sleep, but for adults, knowing your natural clock is very important because you can actually try to, I know this may sound fairy tale-ish, but kind of design your life around your natural clock in the sense that you find a job that, hey, I don't know, that maybe you can, if you're somebody that needs to wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, you can find somewhere that, okay, I'll come to work for 9 or 10 o'clock. Well, or, something like that.
Well, just to talk about that, look at how much damage shift work must have put on people. Because I would think that your natural clock goes with, like, day and night, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that you've got to work the graveyard shift.
And some level of consistency, like having a stable, time.
Some people have that vampire type, syndrome.
Okay. I mean,
they like that night shift, that graveyard shift. They love that, and they sleep in the day.
No, that's fine. Like if I work 4 to 12 every day, but when you're switching up, you work in
not only that,
mornings and nights.
The big problem is, other than your boy Dracula, who probably slept all day, you have to actually do things.
Yes.
Because unfortunately, during the day is when all the things are open. Mm-hmm. So if you got to go to the bank, you really can't do that during your shift. Mm-hmm. Like when you get off, if you get off at, let's say, a shift goes from, say, I don't know, 8 to, 2 to 8, 2 to 11, 2 to 11. Okay? Well, when you get off at 11, you're hyped up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You can't do anything. You can't go to the shop. You can't go to the bank, so you have to kind of wait till the next day. Then you got to do those things when you're supposed to be sleeping.
So you see why everybody's saying they're tired. But sleep
Can't
is
have
actually...
The thing. What the thing is you had that said tired?
I feel like people don't manage themselves. I mean, manage their time well, though. And I mean, your body needs to rejuvenate. You need to relax. You need to sleep.
Right.
Like, people will be sitting up on their phone. I turn my phone off, or if I can't turn it off because I'm expecting a call or something late, I will dim the light so it doesn't bother me, and I like complete darkness. You could do things to put yourself to sleep. Unless you really suffer from sleep deprivation.
Sleep is still actually, they still need to, there's still so much more to learn about sleep. What you sleeping?
It's a lot of, that's how they torture people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing that can just, being an adult is pretty easy. You just feel tired all the time and tell people about how tired you are, and they tell you how tired they are.
Right.
That's what we do.
That's what you do.
No, I'm the only one on the planet. That's why they wrote that for me.
No,
Nutcase. You're a nut. You're a nut job, right?
Mm-mm.
Yeah. It's probably because you're tired.
Mm-mm.
Anyway, Candy, listen, we got to wrap up.
Know your natural clock.
Know your natural clock. I wonder if anyone knows their natural clock. We'll be. Go ahead.
Before you go, you know how you could kind of figure it out?
No.
And people don't do it on vacation, but when you are on vacation, you have an extended period of time that you can do it. You just allow yourself to naturally go to bed whenever your body goes to bed, wake up when it wants to wake up, get rid of, all of the electronics and things like that, limit your caffeine and your alcohol. And see
so when you
how
go on
your
vacation
body...
with your kids, they want to see how that
works.
No,
I mean, well, not with your kids. Yeah. I'm just saying some adults, they take time, a couple of days off for themselves.
You say some. But anyway, thank you, Candy.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Candy.
Pleasure. Is that like a reverse hoodie? I don't know what that is.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Let me just tell you, I want to just say this to you. I always told you that my aunt was a very proper person. And I was not allowed to speak in a certain way just willy-nilly. I was always corrected. So as I told you, I grew up with I had to say ing for everything, and I had to say th for everything. So when I was a kid, I think I told you this before, when people, for a long time when I was like 5, 6, 7 years old, and people would say chicken, I would say, no, it's chicking. Chicken, okay? Or one time, I'll never forget, I lived on East Street, and a friend of mine, we were at a party. I'll never forget this. We were at a party, right? And these guys were saying, boy, I like Tarzan and the Apes, boy. And I said, no.
Tarzan?
And I said, no, it's 1,000 and the Apes. Okay? What's wrong with you?
You're too cute.
Okay? But that was how it was taught. You can't say, because see, they didn't say Tarzan.
Right.
Because we used to, when we were kids, people say 1,000. 1,000 and 8, but okay. So I said, no, it's not 1,000 because I never saw 1,000. I didn't know who he was. Okay, I said it's 1,000 and the Apes. So one of the things that we couldn't handle was the word nanny. Now it has a couple of things. There's a couple of connotations. You have oh, hello. Yes, do you have a nanny?
Right.
A housekeeper, right?
Right.
Which we used to laugh at that in school, right?
But it's the way you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Nanny.
And then you had what do you name?
Nanny.
What's the boy name? Ronnie Butler. Different. Ronnie Butler, right? And
what
Ronnie sang saying, "Do a nanny." But my aunt, who was very proper, said, "No, it's do Aunt Annie."
Oh, is that what it's saying?
I don't know, but that's what she said.
That's what he's
saying. Okay, do Aunt Annie, do Aunt Annie, do Aunt Annie, do Aunt Annie, do. Hey, do Aunt Annie, do.
They're very proper.
We were not allowed to say. So anyway, on another note, I was reading your column, and the opposite of that was, the things, the celebrity stuff. I thought to myself, when did that start in history?
What's that?
The celebrity, like keeping up on what celebrities are. Like this thing, I didn't read the thing. It just had a picture. It was Serena Williams, and it said something like Serena in Venice. When did it start? When did the time?
It's always been that
way. It couldn't have, I don't think they had those.
Always.
First of all, no one could read.
Excuse me.
The caveman didn't have, is over by the cave.
Maybe they did. We weren't there to know how they do it.
I don't think they were into the
People
celebrities.
I've always been fascinated with celebrities.
Yeah, I wonder, because when we were watching The Crown, and you remember the episode where... You remember the episode when JFK and Jackie had visited England? I don't know if that was the era where it began, where they were so enamored by this woman.
The media is where it started.
Right, and that's when
Buffalo
it really...
Bill and all those things were like folklore heroes.
No, but I mean, like, media. For her, like, it was the way she was dressed, the way she carried herself, her every move. It was just...
I think it came about as content because TV started in earnest around about what, the 50s maybe. Well, you had the Hollywood stars.
But nobody was.
The Hollywood stars. Yeah, but it's just interesting how
you were more following them because they were stars and they were. I mean, they were promoting their stuff, but in terms of their everyday life.
I mean, I turned to a station the other day. I was watching shark stuff, and I happened to pass through a station. I don't know the name of it, but it had on this thing about Housewives of Orange County or something. Mm-hmm. You ever seen that?
Oh gosh,
and I don't even know who these people are. Mm-hmm. Are they famous people?
They're like socialites.
I have no idea.
I like there's one guy is there like, he's gonna have surgery on his heart. And I'm like, well,
go have surgery on your heart.
Why are we? What is it? People are having surgery every day.
It's entertainment.
I guess so. It's interesting.
That's what it is. Everybody has their thing. Like, you like to watch the news cycle. And
I'm watching Shark Week now. Have you been watching that?
Entertainment.
That's the only thing I miss about not having TV. I miss Shark Week.
And you know what? At least 75% of Shark Week is in the Bahamas.
In the Bahamas, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You see, BNT got that donation as a result of
that.
Damon
then
John.
You had that program called Naked and Afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, would you do that?
No.
Why? You don't want to see you naked?
No.
They show you a little fuzzy and thing.
I don't want nobody seeing me naked. What? Like, why I need to do that?
I'm just
What's
asking.
the purpose?
It's survival.
No.
In case you get trapped.
I'm not.
Anyway, so okay, you might go to Cat Island or one of them places and get trapped.
If I get trapped, I get trapped with my clothes on.
No. You have to be because your clothes. You might eat your clothes. They had Andros, Exuma, and that's when you really see the real Bahamas because they couldn't find nothing to eat.
They drop plenty weight.
They had to go into the waters, and the sharks come out. I mean, they try to catch a fish when shark come.
No way.
Yeah.
You don't want to be strapped on the family island. You go on Exuma, right? There's no wildlife that they could catch.
So why they put them there?
To survive. What? They caught fish, but they caught fish. They caught lobster.
Okay.
But it was at risk of hammerheads and stuff. Okay, all right. So I say, boy, that's the real Bahamas.
But nothing
right
on land, like nothing. They didn't eat.
Yeah, no, there's nothing. What are you gonna eat on land? I think they had some in Andros.
I was just
and that the fellas was like, what? This island doesn't want us here. I mean, the poison wood.
I know.
Poison wood, the honeycomb rock, because you're barefoot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know how to walk on those?
Listen.
Not barefoot.
I used to walk on those barefoot in Andros. It's a
that's right. You're from Andros, hey?
Yeah,
you know what the technique is?
Ragged Island. The what?
You know what the technique is?
Oh, you have to curve your foot a little bit.
Yeah. And you have hard foot.
No.
That's what the technique is.
No, man, it's a technique. Listen, it's a technique. It's a technique. You can't walk flat on that.
Can I see the bottom of your feet?
Sure.
No, her feet are. No.
You better get ready. Soft as a baby. Too. Yeah, I have a mole on my foot. Yeah. Soft as a baby's butt.
Yeah.
Look at that.
That's a hard butt.
On somebody else?
Yeah.
Like a mole on the bottom.
You see people, I notice people on the family islands. They walking around barefoot. They walking around all the time barefoot. They walk around that Hurricane Rock. Someone like me walking that, I puncture. I got a puncture.
You have to know how to walk on it.
As we say in the Bahamas,
puncture. You're soft.
Huh?
Are you soft?
I'm soft, yes.
You're soft.
And look at the bottom of his feet. Look at that.
I have hard feet.
You have the hardest feet, so you should be able to walk on that with no problem.
But it ain't that kind of hard.
It is that kind of hard. I feel sorry for the honeycomb rock.
He just needs to walk on his heels, and he's straight.
No, actually today was one of the few days I actually lotioned today.
And his feet always dry.
You lotion?
But I lotioned today.
And
I am not sure you did.
No, well, compared to
look at the back.
Not your feet.
Well, I don't lotion your feet.
Yes, you do. You lotion your feet.
I don't have time for them kind of products. Okay?
So don't be talking about your foot then.
No, your foot hard.
No, my feet are not hard.
You used to probably run across the honeycomb rock. Next thing you see all them honeycomb rock breaking. You just follow Rogan's path and you walk down a smooth path. No, I was very proud of the Bahamas. So you had Shaquille O'Neal on.
That's funny.
You had, from. I didn't realize that the Bahamas has the largest shark sanctuary. That the whole of the Bahamas sharks are presented.
All the time. Every time they do Shark Week, that's like in the Bahamas.
No, I don't watch it a lot.
Yeah, well, every year they always talk about that.
But I was glad to see Damon putting some money for those.
Yeah, man. He doubled it.
There's oh goodness, I don't want to not say the right name.
Okay.
But this diver. Well, I follow them on Instagram.
Of course.
Oh goodness, Andre. People will know Andre Musgrove.
Not familiar with him.
No.
Underwater photographer, videographer.
Andre Musgrove?
Yeah, let me tell you, he takes the most amazing pictures. He's Bahamian born.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, Musgrove.
Not to
Musgrove.
There's a picture of him. Let me show you this. There's some blue hole off of look at all those sharks, man.
Let me see.
You sure he ain't photoshopped that?
Photography.
No, man.
That's a blue hole, though.
It's unbelievable. Yo, his IG is...
Oh, my gosh.
His IG is crazy. Like, his pictures are crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. So what, this guy has a skate
the thing is, he's no longer living, so that's his last photo right there.
No, it's not. Yeah, no.
It's crazy.
So,
I mean, look at that one. Oh, no, that's not with the sharks. But it's... Yeah. Since we were talking about sharks.
See, and this is what they talk about. One of the things that I thought was interesting that they talked about that Damon, what's his name?
Damon John
was saying is that, it's amazing how they kill 70 million sharks a year. 70 million, of which something like 80% is just for the fin. They cut the fin off and then throw the shark back in and the shark drowns, okay? And they were saying how, the money that you make from that is minuscule compared to the money you make from people coming to, say, dive and experience that.
Right.
So I'm glad that Bahamians, and it's happening more and more. You'd be shocked to see the amount of people who are studying or want to study things like marine biology now.
Yeah.
And the Bahamas is kind of like a living lab. It's got the third largest barrier reef in the world. I think the other one is in a weird place in the Indian Ocean, and then of course Australia. And Australia is having some bad problems because the coral is dying because of the heat.
Wow.
And the ocean raises by 1 or 2 degrees, and it wipes out the coral.
Listen, I went into even here, man. You go to the beach.
Yeah.
The water, you're thinking you're gonna, you're going into the water to get refreshed. It's nice and cool.
A little hot tub.
Yeah, man. It's warm. It's like warm.
The sun, we've talked about this on many shows, but the sun right now, I just went into the store to get the water. Mm-hmm. Between my car and then stepping under the roof of the store is at least a 20-degree difference. Yeah. The sun is just so intense. There's no doubt that a layer, the ozone layer, has been dramatically impacted.
It's exhausting.
Because the intensity of just the sun it's excruciating, So I don't know. I hope it's reversible. I don't know how scientifically it is. I don't know the science. It just seems that if it took this long to that's what I'm saying. If it took this long to damage, no one was really measuring it.
Right.
And now it's like, oh, it's hot. The icebergs are melting. Mm-hmm. So how are you going to reverse that? Put it on freeze? Because you can't. How do you get an iceberg back?
Right.
Isn't that like thousands of years?
Exactly.
I think I'm in the right time. I think I'm timing this right.
You in this time.
You and Andreas and all them, they got to worry about things. Anyway, so we're here with Candy, and we're going to talk with her when she gets back. We're going to hit the news, and you got a couple of minutes, so let's talk what you got for us today.
So every time you ask Ed how he's doing, what does he say?
I'm tired.
You're always tired or dying or...
they're all dying, but I'm tired. I don't say this is the end.
Well, no, the first thing that comes out is...
This is it for me.
That I
got one more good year.
No, I never say that. That's a direct lie. I said things are running out. Time is running out. That's what I say. I never say one.
You say a variety of things.
But sometimes, tired for the most part. The majority of people, when you ask them... I am.
Okay.
If people ask me...
So I'm just truthful. And you're not. That's what.
No, I'm saying I just only used you as an intro, man.
You're a complainer.
Okay. Are you ever tired?
No, I don't.
Okay, that's good. That's good. We're happy.
You're never tired?
Never.
No, I'd be facetious with it.
Oh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I should take this water and
no, but a lot of people. Okay, children.
Sorry, Mommy.
Oh, you got kids, Go ahead.
Oh, my goodness. No, a lot of people gripe about, being tired all the time and not getting...
Exhausted.
Yes, the feeling of exhaustion and not getting enough sleep. And it brought in a debate the other day. And we were talking about, certain people need to only require a small amount, not a lot of sleep, and then you have people that require like 10, 11 hours of sleep. Do you actually know what? And they call
like a bear?
Some people know, but it's rare. Like those are, you have people that only need 4 or 5 hours of sleep, or so they say. And then you have people that, require more. Do you actually know what your natural clock is?
How many hours I require? 8.
Right.
You require 8 hours.
No, we're not talking what the scientists say.
I know that's what Rogan's body requires.
Yeah, but everybody is actually different.
I don't know what mine requires. I know it ain't getting it.
Right, and so
you can't catch up.
And guess what? Because you know how, what y'all looking at?
No, just go ahead and do your thing.
She's get distracted easily. Hey, stay on message.
So when it's very important to know what your natural clock is. And a lot of people's natural clock does not actually fit the schedule that that is required in their that is a part of their daily life. Like even work, getting to work. Some people have to be to work for 7 a.m. in the morning. Their natural clock is.
No one is getting any sleep.
What's that?
No one is getting any sleep. That's the bottom line. It is a very major problem.
Right, and so that brought up another debate whether, our ancestors, the hunter-gatherers, and were they getting more sleep than we were?
Probably.
And did they go to sleep at the, at the rhythm of the sun?
For one, they didn't have lights. So darkness, you need to be in darkness to be in sleep, to get good sleep, number one.
Well, they didn't have electricity.
Well, they had fire, right? Yeah. But what I'm saying is once they put the fire out, there was no like LED on the clock and all this type of stuff.
The stars.
They did not have 24-hour TV. At least when I was growing up, the TV shut off at 12 o'clock. Okay? So at least time to go to bed. Okay? They didn't have, I wouldn't even talk about this. Okay? They didn't have to commute.
They moved a lot, though.
No, they moved one time. They didn't move every day.
When you have to go hunt,
you have to commute.
What I'm saying is, what I'm saying about
they
commute
moved a whole lot
they
more.
were nomads, but what they did is they moved in a group to another area, then they settled there for a while, hunted that down, and then moved. Every day, people in Florida, for instance, if they live wherever, and they got to go into Miami, they got to get up 5 o'clock in the morning just to make it for work for 7, 8 o'clock because of the traffic. So your body, we're not living a natural state. By the way, we're talking about bare feet, and you were talking about hard feet. We're not designed to wear shoes. That's not our natural state. And I wouldn't even talk about what women doing with the
high heels. Well, we didn't start that, by the way.
Whom started that?
Men used to wear high heels first.
Okay, so y'all copied us?
No.
Is that correct? Really?
But you ain't copied us gone down back.
Men wore high heels
first.
You need to find that out and show me that, because I don't believe it.
I never heard that.
I wouldn't be surprised. The Cavaliers had that. The what you call the Cavaliers, the French guys wore heels.
Now the high heel evolved, but the heel.
Well, there's men gone back to flat, and y'all ain't copy that. We'll be right back. We're here having a heated debate with Miss Nicolette Bethel, the anthropologist. I'm taking it down a notch. I'm going PBS level. Let me give you a paradigm. In the United States of America, in
worst
Great Britain,
example.
Well, I know you have that problem, but I'm going by an economic model, not by a political model. In most developed countries, which have tax structures, this is about economics. What they do is why you see major sponsorships of arts, sports, education, is because they're tax write-offs.
But
they can credit it against their tax.
Right. But
okay?
But
they're not doing it for philanthropic reasons.
No. But the reason I say the United States of America is the worst example to use is it's the only developed country that works like that. In every other developed country, part of the rationale for their development is government investment in the arts, in the education, not business investment.
Right, but if you
businesses will invest following government, but in every single other place other than the United States of America.
But they have high tax structures.
Yes, they have high tax structures, but it's not a question of a tax write-off, which makes it an iffy thing. Yep. It's a question of an investment in their own culture, because that is part of their
But Nicolette,
cause of existence.
You have to admit
so the United States of America is an anomaly, and one can make the argument that it's an anomaly that has caused all kinds of I don't know what I want to say, angst or whatever, when it comes to creating the arts. It's changed the way in which the arts works in the United States of America.
Let's put it this way.
Right?
All I know is that the Carnegie Hall and all those great halls are spoken by private enterprise.
Yes, absolutely.
But having said that...
But I could go back to you and I could say then you can look at the Royal Shakespeare Company and the Barbican and the National, all the rest of them, which are funded by taxpayers' dollars
right now,
in London.
Okay, so let's get
and
with
in
that.
every other place
we
around
just had
the
a
world,
situation
the CBC, the National Place,
where they have 70%, where they have up to 70% tax rates.
Yes.
I'm not saying they shouldn't.
Yes.
I'm not saying they shouldn't, but we freak out on 12%. Yeah. So we
freak out on 12% VAT. Yes.
Well, whatever. It's a tax. Yeah. We don't have income tax, so that's what we got.
Yeah.
We freaked out when it went from 7.5% to 12%. Yep. Okay. Yep. If you're going to have, and I agree with the premise that if you're going to have tax dollars, you got to see the value.
Yep.
Okay. But it kind of spins back to the civil service thing again, because every tax dollar that we make, we have to pay civil servants. And civil servant pensions and civil servant.
Wait, hold on. But let's
insurance.
But let's back it up a little bit. Let's because you wanted to talk about the civil service. So there's a number of issues. The civil service is highly dysfunctional. Yes, but I'm going to turn it around. When we pay our taxes, we are seeing the results of our tax money because we have certain services.
Not efficient services.
No, forget the efficiency, but we have certain services.
I'm going to be the agnostic here.
I'm being a devil's advocate right now.
You can be the devil's advocate. I'm going to be the person of disbelief, because this is what I'm saying to you. We're paying salaries. That's not services. Okay?
No, but you're paying salaries so they can provide services.
Yeah, but guess
maybe
what?
You're paying too many salaries.
If I have a room full of cookie handout people, they hand out cookies. Okay, that's their role. That particular building, they're supposed to hand out cookies. But really, I only need one person to hand out cookies. And there's 40 people in the room handing out cookies.
That's
okay?
a problem.
That's what the problem is.
That is the problem.
So that's why that's part of the reason why we're averse to increase taxes. I think, other than the visceral. I just don't want to pay out of my money.
No. But the other side of it is that we don't understand the linkage between what we actually do get and taxation. For example, we have now people may disagree with me.
Because of the centralized nature of the thing.
No. We have access to free education. We have access to free health care.
Yeah.
We don't think of those things as things that people pay taxes for.
But that is entitlements.
As entitlements, but that is what the taxes are paying for. And these are not cheap things.
No. But it's an irony, right? And
the quality is not great we're getting.
Right.
But we have access to them, and that's part of the tax regime.
But see, look at.
We just don't make the connection.
But see, look at the direct correlation. So you want quality education, right? You want
quality public education.
Quality public education. You want quality public health
care. Yes.
You want all of that. Parks.
Yes.
Recreation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what you have instead is where you have this huge percentage of the tax revenues going to salaries and benefits.
Yes.
With the quality of those services being diminished.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. And then who uses those services? And I'm just being general, right? Or maybe folks who, based on their income levels, may not have as much of an expectation for much better. Although I would think that everyone wants a quality education for their kid, but as opposed to zero. Okay, so those who then are the tax revenue generators because of the income that they generate, rather than say someone who's unemployed. I'm just using that extreme.
And you also have had in the healthcare system, not so much now, but you have had the situation where people who can afford to pay for healthcare use the free healthcare anyway.
Yeah. But they say their tax dollars are going towards it. They might as well take advantage of it.
You'd find that happens, but I think that someone who has insurance, for instance, is going to go off.
No, that does not happen nearly as much as it used to. It used to happen a lot more in the 20th century.
Right.
But the impact,
we're in the 21st now.
Yeah, right. But the impact of that is that there's less to go around for everybody else, right? I mean,
let's face it, the Bahamas is a nuance extraordinaire.
But
right?
we
have all this money. Where do we spend our health care? Miami.
But okay, but wait.
We have a ton of money. Look at the University of Bahamas, right? Where do we spend our money? It's a catch-22, isn't it? Because we say, you know what, and I'm not denigrating it. We say, okay, the University of Bahamas, okay, it's okay, but I'd rather go to Penn State.
But that's not always.
But no, that's not.
And they'd rather spend their $40,000 at Penn State.
No, I'm sorry. If it was Penn State, I wouldn't necessarily take offense, but it's not Penn State.
But I'm just using that as an example. Okay? Yeah, no, it
ain't Penn State.
It could be bottom-up state.
Yeah,
I know.
But it's not always. But it's not always because they just want to send their kids away. No, I think a lot of times the University of Bahamas may not have a program that their child is interested in, and so they go somewhere else.
Let me tell you something.
There is that, but I think there's a lot of ignorance about the programs that we have. I think there's so. Let's go back to the whole tax structure that we have. What we have is, and this is why, I guess, it's a great conversation to be having. And it all relates back to the civil service. But the tax structure that we have is a tax structure that was developed by a minority government to meet the needs of the minority.
Precisely.
Okay?
Precisely.
And we have never adapted that to meet the needs of the majority. We had a majority government. We've had a majority government, and we've tried to make that meet the needs of the majority, but you can't.
But let me show you this from a tax perspective, how that works. So you have, let's use a simple number, let's say 100 people. And you have out of the 100 people, you have 10 people, 10, 20 people who make all the money. Okay? And then you have 80 to 90 people who are, they're not even taxable in terms of the wage that they make. Okay? And certainly even if you tax them, their contribution to the tax pool is going to be smaller than the 20 people.
Wait, so you're talking about the original model?
I'm just talking about a model.
Okay.
I'm just using a model, okay? Now, the reality is, based on whatever we had, because we want to track banks and, bank secrecy, we don't have income tax, okay? And even if we did have income tax,
but why don't we have income tax?
You know what would happen? Let me tell you what would happen.
No, but why don't we have income tax?
I'll tell you why we don't have it, because we first of all developed this tax regime so that not only was it beneficial to the wealthy, but it also became beneficial to an industry, bank secrecy and coming into the Bahamas, right? The other thing is, because people could avoid taxes in their own regimes, right? The other thing, though, is that if you have income tax, just like everywhere else, why we're created, is the wealthy will find ways to avoid it. And because of the smallness of our population, you'll end up with a shrinking tax base. Give you an example.
But we already have a shrinking tax base.
Exactly. We'll give you an example.
I mean, no matter what, we already have a shrinking tax base, so it didn't change.
People talk about having a wage tax. Okay?
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
All right. Now, you know what will happen? Rogan Smith makes $100,000 a year. She owns a company. Okay? You know what she does? She goes, you know what, Mr. CFO? Change it down to, change my salary to $30,000. Okay? And I will get my revenue, my income, from dividends, because we don't have a capital gains tax, we have an income tax.
Right.
So now she's making, it's just always a way to play the system. Okay, so it is a very difficult thing. It is a very difficult thing. It's not only just insidious, but people always, some of the great political scientists always said, it's every citizen's role to avoid taxes, not to evade it, but to avoid it. So everyone's trying to avoid taxes. Okay,
except for the fact that in the Bahamas, I think we had a genius tax system. The only problem was we didn't know that we had it, right?
And what's that?
Customs duties. When you import everything. The downside of that is that...
It's regressive.
No, but that's not the big downside. The big downside, because VAT is also regressive. Everything that we want to put in place is regressive, right?
It's less regressive, but we'll get into that another time. Because you have services, too. That's why I say that. Because on duties it was all goods.
Yeah, right. So you're looking at the income side. I'm looking at what you pay for side. So for the person, for the ordinary person, VAT is more regressive because you have to pay on everything.
Everything.
Right? But the whole idea
of lesser amount. It's a lesser percentage. We were paying 40% duties.
But we're still paying 40% duties.
No, it's not that is
right?
It's not that
it only
possible.
It only becomes good when we stop paying the duty.
Thank you.
And we ain't stopped paying the duty yet.
If you look at the average
the theory is great, but we haven't stopped paying the duty, so we're paying more. We're paying double tax.
Let's think about this from a regressive perspective. If you're making $10,000 a year, you're less apt to buy a car that's
no, but you're paying tax on every other thing that you buy because we produce nothing. Everything you spend. This is the whole thing about everybody talking about.
Nicolette, the duties have gone down. That's period. That's not arguable. If you look at the duties for 5 years ago to now.
But they haven't been removed.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is the actual, because you now have taxes on services. The base of where you're getting tax from.
I totally get it. No, I get it. But the problem is, I don't buy the argument that the government makes because if they were serious, duties would be gone.
Well,
right?
I can tell you why it isn't gone, but that's another story.
It is another story, but it's.
It isn't gone because we'd be bankrupt. Because they have to finance the transition.
It isn't gone.
That's it.
It isn't gone because the model is faulty, I believe. The model may be better at raising revenue. It's definitely better for the government bottom line. It's better for the books. But this is not a solution to our revenue woes. This is just not it.
I'm not saying it isn't it, but let me just give you an example. So they use the New Zealand model, okay? Now, in New Zealand, they had a whole range of taxes, including income tax, including corporate tax. And what they did was they introduced VAT. There was no exemptions, and they except for income tax, they wiped out every other tax, and they reduced income tax. But we have this weird nuance. We have this thing where we have no income tax.
No, but we have customs
so we have all these other but we reduced. But that's what they got rid of duties. You said, why didn't you get rid of duties? They couldn't get rid of duties because they didn't have another tax to rely on.
No, okay.
Other than that.
So let me let me go back. Let me go back to that. So that's why the whole thing is flawed because you can't. That is the last tax you bring in. Right? All the other taxes come in before that. So we have this model that is not typical of the world, and we're going to the world to look at a way to replace it. We have this model that this crazy man came up with, but it worked. Because it worked, and then it didn't work. Because the wealthier Bahamians got, as we did in that period between 1967 and 2008. Right? The wealthier Bahamians got, the more Bahamians consumed, and what we had was a consumption tax before there were any other consumption taxes. Right? Everybody
how long have we had duties? How long have we had duties? Obviously, since your grandfather was customs controller.
Yeah, we had duties.
Okay.
We've had duties.
Way back.
Right, yes.
Because you remember he didn't want to sneak anything in.
No. We've had customs duties, but then it's in that Harold Christie, Stafford Sands era where we're focusing on customs duties and using this apparent taxlessness to fool people into thinking that you're coming into a tax-free jurisdiction.
But let me tell you something.
So, but let me at that point. All right. So where the rest of the world is, you may remember when you and I were in school, we would go to school and we'd have all these teachers who would tell us that the Bahamian economy is going to crash because the Bahamian economy doesn't make any sense. Because we're not investing in agriculture, we're not investing in industry, we're not investing in manufacturing, all these areas where the rest of the world is making its money from. And in the Bahamas, we're investing in tourism and banking.
Yep.
And the Bahamian economy is going to crash and nobody can see how it's going to work. Well, fast forward 30 years, the whole world has moved into the Bahamian model.
Well, because consumption drives the economies of the rest of the world.
Right. Fine. Consumption drives the economies. So we were taxing consumption long before anybody else was taxing consumption.
Well, they had sales tax in the United States long ago. That's consumption tax.
Yeah, but
okay, they had VAT in the UK long ago.
No. They didn't have VAT when we were having VAT. Just came in. I remember when VAT started in the UK.
Well, I can tell you one thing. They definitely had sales tax in the US way back.
Right, but it's what, 7%?
That's a consumption.
No,
well, yeah,
but it's 7%.
Well, we had 7%.
No, Ed, we had 40%
right,
and 80%
I understand,
and 60%.
But Nicolette, you have to look at this thing in the whole picture.
I am.
We also didn't have a 30% income tax. So let's just look at real tax numbers. Okay, let's not, this is real.
Right.
Okay. If you have a 35%, first of all, when you have a consumption tax, it's a tax of choice except for basic needs. So in other words, you could decide whether you want to get a Mercedes-Benz or a Nissan whatever. Okay? when you have an income tax, that is no tax of choice.
Yeah.
You will pay the tax on your income.
But here's the genius of it. The genius of it is that when you have an income tax, you're only taxing the residents, right?
Yes.
And we have under 500,000 residents.
Right.
Okay? But when you have a consumption tax, you are taxing everybody
Wrong.
Including...
Once again,
when
you go to the
wrong?
United States of America, if you, just like here, if you go to a store and you show them, this is a fact.
No,
I'm not arguing with you.
No.
Have you ever bought in a car? Time out, please. Have you ever bought a car in the United States? No, I'm just asking. Have you ever bought a car? If you tell them it's for export, you don't pay sales tax.
That's not my point.
You said it's on everyone. It isn't.
It is on everyone. This is why it's on everyone. Because every single thing that you buy inside this country, everything you bring into this country, you have to pay tax on.
No, I'm arguing this point. You said that hold on a second.
So I'm saying
that in the United States.
I'm saying that. Hear me out. Mm-hmm. I'm saying that because we have a tourism product that brings in, let's say, between 3 to 5 million people annually, we have to cover their consumption.
Right.
Everybody has to cover that consumption. So we're really taxing a 3 to 5 million people consumption base.
No, here. I thought you said that in the United States.
No, I'm talking about here.
But just so you know, the VAT here as well. If you are buying certain goods, if you're a visitor, you don't pay VAT. You know that, just like when you go to the UK. Okay.
But you did pay customs duties.
You did pay customs duty, right?
That's my point.
But
that's the genius of it.
And by the way, out of all of those nuances, out of all of those concerns about how our economy was structured, get this. It was the most successful economy in the whole Caribbean.
Absolutely.
Okay. It built a middle class.
Yes.
Okay. A middle class that's unequaled in other places in the Caribbean.
Well.
Except for Bermuda and Cayman.
No. I agreed.
Yeah.
But Bermuda and Cayman followed up and are using our model. Right. But the problem is that we're moving into an era where that model is just not going to fly globally.
Well, and I don't think anyone knows what the model is that's going to fly globally.
So I guess when I say we haven't cracked it, we're using old, borrowed, out of date ideas to grow our revenue. When we were working off a model that was revolutionary, we need to be thinking in completely different ways to figure out how to create
I'm going to
revenue.
go on record as saying that I don't think the Bahamas had a revolutionary form of taxation. I think we copied it, but we benefited from it. We benefited from something that existed.
We copied the customs duties only and no other kind of tax?
No, I'm saying we didn't. There was customs duties before we existed. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. We got to have to take this conversation into another time because we're running out of time. We've run out of time.
Shucks.
So I know it happens. We'll be back on Thursday. Our guest on Thursday is Sir Arthur Folks, and that'll be interesting because we want to talk about Emancipation Day and all of that stuff. More of the same. We'll be back on Thursday.